Welcome everyone to another episode of Life Chat with Bibiana. This is the month, as you know, Vilma, and our audience. It's Women's History Month, and I think that it's something that we need to discuss and to bring to the forelight, especially that we're women. So we should definitely give honor where honor is due, and for those foremothers and that have paved the way and whose shoulder we're standing on. So Vilma, go ahead and tell us some history and background about Women's History Month.
Sure, absolutely. As I start to think about it, I have to wonder why we have to have these special days and special recognition, and it just brought to mind that we had to do it because we were not heard before, and it brings me back to the history of Women's History Month, because I was wondering what was it all about. And one of the things that I learned, it started in 1911 in New York City. And it was, it started as a local celebration in actually in Santa Rosa, California. And then it went to Women's History Week in 1978. So Women's History Month actually started out as a celebration, and this is to inform our audience as well, in as a local celebration in Santa Rosa, California. Now, it's two different things. We have Women's History Month and we have International Women's Day, which we just had 2 days ago. Not yes, the 9th, I think it was. The 8th. Correct, yes, March 8th. And I have it written down here. And it started out March 8th in New York City. And what happened was they were arguing or talking about better labor conditions for women as well as the right to vote. And it was it actually started in 1908. And they have been pushing since then. And when I saw this, I said, and there are people still who refuse to go out and vote. When we have these people like having fighting for better labor conditions for women and the right to vote, and we just look at it as if, oh well, I don't feel like voting. I don't like either party. No, that's one of the reasons why you really need to go out and vote and do something to show our appreciation for what was done for us. And then, as I started to look at, various women who were making history and, books out there that they recommend to read, films out there that they recommend to read that talks about women and our history. And some history making women, of course, we know Rosa Parks, a way back. And why was Rosa Parks mentioned as making history? And if I ask any student out there, they can tell me because she refused to sit in the back of the bus and she changed history. So that's great. But before I continue with that, because this is kind of modern, we see women making history in the Bible. Can you think of some history makers in the Bible to share with our audience?
Well, to me, I've always loved the story of Ruth and Naomi. I always loved the story of Esther. Those to me are lady. A matter of fact, even Mary, Jesus's mother, I would say she's a history maker, because even the time where she was basically at the wedding and they were saying they ran out of wine. And she was the one who said, oh, she went to Jesus and said, they ran out of wine. And he's like, what do you want me to do? My time is not yet. But she's like, no. She didn't even say anything to him really. She went to the people and said, whatever he tells you to do it. So
Mhm.
she kind of propelled him to start stepping out into his destiny. He said it wasn't his time. She made it his time. So to me, those things of what she did of propelling him forward, and not only that, she was a woman that had such faith and trust in God that
Mhm.
when the angel
Mhm.
came to her and said, you will bear a child, and she says, do it unto me according to his will. Now,
Mhm.
thinking about it, you're a virgin, number one, and number two, you're not married. And back in those days, what did they do? They stoned you to death. So she was really not thinking about her own self. She was
Mhm.
really not thinking about her circumstances, but she wanted to surrender her will to line up with the will of the Father. And I think that's just awesome. So I should recognize her first of all as one of those women who who um who stepped out and made history. Because for her not thinking of herself, but thinking about God's will overriding her will. I
Mhm.
think that's awesome. And for her propelling him forward into doing, walking in his destiny. So I just want to recognize Mary as one of those ladies that I think is the pioneer.
Wonderful, wonderful. And even going back before Mary, the daughters of Zelophehad. I'm trying to make sure I'm pronouncing it correctly. And the story behind this, just to bring our audience up to date, we talk about the daughters of Zelophehad. Um, the Zelophehad was Manasseh's son. Manasseh was the son of Joseph, and Joseph had two sons. We know Ephraim and Manasseh, and Zelophehad was the son of Manasseh, and he died, and he didn't have any boys. He had all girls. So we know the story of the land when it was proportioned out to all the men. And those women stood up and they went to Moses and say, it's not fair that we should be left out of your partitioning of the land, because my father had no sons. I think we should inherit. This was something new. This was history. They've never done that before. They've never given land to women before. So Moses, that was something that he had to go and speak to God about, and God confirmed, yeah, they're right. And so we see them speaking up and standing up, and then they were allotted land. Now, if they didn't do that, they would be left without. So we have history been making from there. So as I look at our history makers now, as I look at yourself, as I look at myself, I have to go back and look at those in the Bible and how they stood up and they weren't afraid to speak up and do these things, and I really admire that, and it just gives me courage because we have been speaking up and trying to get our rightful recognition from a way back from Bible days. So that's really fascinating, really, really fascinating for me.
Right, that's right. And that shows that no matter what, um, we have to make our voices be heard. We have
Mhm.
to be able to be world changers, regardless
Mhm.
of what the situational circumstances, regardless of what society says, because the society put these things on women. In God's eyes, we're one. In God's eyes, we are equal. But society and people have placed limitations on individuals from accomplishing and being who they're intended to be. So say, for instance, those daughters did not say, hey, we're going to take that stand. We're going to ask for what really truly belongs to us. You know, what would happen? Like you just said, they wouldn't have anything.
Mm-mm.
So we all have to be able to do that. And there's many other ladies in the Bible who took a stand and able to accomplish the things that they need to accomplish. Like Esther. Esther, it was on her shoulders basically to save the Jewish people. She could have decided that she's not going to pray or do anything or go before the king, because back then they had the law that if you came before the king um, without the king calling you forth, you could die.
Mm-hmm.
So for her to do that, that took a lot of courage, and that took a lot of confidence
Absolutely.
in that, if I die, I die. If I live, I live. And that's the mentality. We can't really think only about ourselves. We have
Mm-hmm.
to think about, the overall picture, the end results.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. And going back, I think also of Moses' mother, Zipporah, because she knew that her son was special. She hid him,
Mm-hmm.
in the basket, in where they knew that the king's Pharaoh's daughter normally go by. It took courage because she could have been discovered. And the decree was that every boy baby, every male baby that was born, the midwife should kill them. And here it was, she took that brave stand because of what she believed in. She believed that God wanted to use her son mightily, and did that. And even his sister Miriam, you know, um, running to go call her to nurse Moses, as an infant, took a lot of courage.
Yeah.
A lot of courage.
And I'm thinking too, I'm thinking about the story. I'm thinking that Pharaoh's daughter or sister, I don't remember what she was, but I'm thinking she probably knew that was the mother of the child, because it so happened that she went and got this person who's nursing. But anyway, I just always think about that and say,
Yeah.
for her, um, you know, sooner or later she must have known somehow. But like we said, it took courage, and it also took courage on her part to take in this little boy when
Mm-hmm.
her family have made that decree
Mm-hmm.
and raised him as her own,
Mm-hmm.
and knowing that he was a Jewish boy. So she took courage to also do something like that.
Right, right. And as you mentioned that she may have known, but she may not have known. You know why? Because it was the custom where other people would breastfeed other people's babies.
That's true.
And even I don't know if they still do it, but in some African countries, and I don't, my good African friends, you know me, I don't mean it anyway, but I've seen it happen, and I've been told where if a mother is unable to breastfeed, they would breastfeed that baby for that mother, so that, or if the baby was very sick and needed breast milk as nourishment, because you have some babies who can't tolerate the formula because their stomach is so fragile, they get breast milk. Now here we give them breast milk from the breast bank, but these are other people's milk, and we do it very regularly right now in the 21st century. But there are countries where they don't have fridge to store it because it goes through such a rigorous process, and it has to be stored at a certain degree. And in those countries, they don't have that. So they just take the baby, breastfeed them, and give it back to the mother, and it's fine. So I don't think it was anything strange when she went and got the mother, to breastfeed the baby. So, she
Yeah.
may or
I
she
didn't
may not.
even I didn't even know that they do that in America, where you
Yes,
have a
yes, we
breast
do.
milk. I had no clue about
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
Something today.
Yep.
Okay, so who else in the Bible that stood out to you?
Well, I think about Delilah, not in a good way, but you know, knowing, and we're not talking about just good women, but how she wanted to know the secret of this man, Samson, and against all odds, she did not stop. And this was like a bad history making until, she was able to learn his secret and had him, his eyes being gouged out and the spirit leaving him, so there are some devious of us, let's put it that way, and we make history in doing
Well,
those
well,
devious things.
well, Delilah, she had motivation because they were going to give her stuff, and she was for her people. So for the Philistines, so she wanted her people to defeat
Mm-hmm.
um, Samson. So she had motivation. It
Mm-hmm.
might, like you said, she's devious and cunning, but and that she goes to when we step out of the will of God for our lives. We don't really know what is waiting for us. And he was a Nazarite, and he wasn't supposed to cut his hair, and he wasn't supposed to marry outside of his race, but
Mm-hmm.
he chose to go outside of what God's will was for his life, and he fell into um, her manipulation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So all these women I name, more so in the Old Testament. But when I look at in the New Testament, I think of the woman with the issue of blood, and
Mhm.
it
Yeah,
may not look as if she was a history maker, but she definitely was, because
absolutely.
she went into the crowd when she should not have been in the crowd. She could have been caught, she could have been killed. And not only did she touch on different people, including men, which she shouldn't have, but she went directly to touch the hem of Jesus's garment, which was, looked on as the man of men, then the highest among, when you think of the Jews. But she needed something. She had a need, and she pressed her way and touched the hem of his garment and was healed. And there's so many, and this entire show could just portray just women in the Bible who were very influential, and we can talk about that, and the other shows we just let them, our international guests and our other guests, talk about our everyday women. But being two you know Christian women, we can share this information.
Exactly. And even thinking about the woman at the well,
Mm-hmm.
she's also like the first evangelist
Mm-hmm.
in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
She after she had her encounter with Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
she went and told everyone that she knew.
Mm-hmm.
A matter of fact, the whole community changed because of her. So, yet she was a prostitute, or yet, adulteress, or whatever it may be,
Mm-hmm.
but she was somewhat considered the first evangelist in the Bible because she went out and told everyone. She didn't care if they wanted to hear or not of
Right.
what this man, look what this man had done for me. Look
Right.
how this man have changed my life. So that's another awesome woman that she
Mm-hmm.
didn't care what they thought about her. She,
Mm-hmm.
and she still didn't care what they thought about her. She did what she thought was right. She got that living water, and she wanted to share that living water with
Mm-hmm.
everyone she encountered.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And just continuing, I am thinking now, and you did mention Ruth. You didn't but you talk about Ruth, but I want to talk about Naomi, as who was her mother-in-law. That Naomi, she left Bethlehem in search of bread, in going out to find food, and lost everything that she had. But she was determined that she was going to go back to the beginning, go back to where she came from, because she recognized that she left the place of bread and she was going back there to where to Bethlehem so that she could be fed and nourished. And although she was sad, and as she said, she left full and she was coming back empty, but still she knew that God had a higher purpose and a higher calling for her. And she began to nurture and mentor Ruth, so that Ruth eventually got married to Boaz. And who is in that line? Jesus.
And not only that, think about the heart-wrenching thing that your husband died, your two sons died, and you're left with nothing. And you have these two daughter-in-laws, and you're too old, you can't have any more children. That's just a pain, and out of that pain, God had a way and provision for her in her home. I just think that's just awesome. And that's why I did bring up her name also, but that's why too, for Ruth and going forward, Ruth could have went back to her home too, because she had no more sons. But she decided that I'm going to stay faithful and I'm going to stay committed to this woman and be with her. She said, your God will be my God and your people my people. And that's a statement that she forsook all to be in support and to be in, taking care of her mother-in-law. That took courage also.
And I keep going back to the Old Testament. I love the entire Bible, but I love the Old Testament as well. So I keep going back because as I think about it, they just keep coming in my mind is Rahab, which is, when the children of Israel wanted to spy out the land and wanted to go in to see what things were like, she was one of those who hid them on her rooftop. And what happened, they promised that they would, when they came in to attack, they would save her, because Rahab had heard the news about the Israelites and their God and what he was doing for them. So although she did it, she was scared, but she said she would do it because, she was hearing all these things about their God, and they saved her. They kept their word, as I know they would. And here we go again. Rahab is spoken about in the Bible and is in the lineage of Jesus Christ. What a story.
Yeah, and she's a smart woman. She's a very strategic leader, or seer, whatever you want to call her, because she's like, I'm hearing what these Jews are doing. Everywhere they go, they have success. Now, this is what I'm going to do. She went all against all her people to save them and to help the spies. And she knew what deal to make that not only myself, but my household was saved. She already had a strategic plan mapped out of what she wanted for this. So this is a woman who had foresight. She knew exactly. She was a strategic planner and a seer of knowing, say, hey, I'm going to save my family, and I know exactly how to do this. These Jews come in, they take over, they kill everyone, they have the favor of God. I'm going to be with them. I'm going to form my alliance with them, and that speaks volumes.
And you get me started. I love talking scripture, and the other, I in the Old Testament again, I think of David's wife, Bathsheba. Now, Bathsheba's historical event in my mind was when her husband, before David was hungry and tired and wanted, some, I think it was food or drink, and the husband kind of just brushed him off, right? And when Bathsheba recognized that he did that, He was like, "You're foolish. You're a foolish man. What is that you did?" And she ran and prepared some food and gave it to him, you know, and thus saved herself and her family, because she know, David being a warrior, or the warrior he was going to just wipe them out. And just through her kindness, she saved him.
I didn't think of that. Okay.
Yeah. What you got? What else you got?
Well, there's so many. Even you saying we have some women that really bad, like Jezebel. She was a rebel, but she was a strong rebel in the Bible. What she said, she had people, even the prophets, afraid of her. So it speaks volume of
Mm-hmm.
the power and the authority when we walk in our authority, not for bad like she did, but for good. If we
Mm-hmm.
walk and understand the authority that we have, that we are really realize that we're powerful. We don't need to think of ourselves less than. We have all the skills and the ability and the strength within that we may need for any task that God has assigned to us.
Absolutely. Who else?
Elizabeth.
Yep, yep. And as you mentioned, Elizabeth, I'm gonna come with you with another one. Talk about her.
Welcome. I just thought that's interesting that even her husband did not believe that they could have a child.
Mm-hmm.
But Elizabeth was another one that trusted in God and brought forth a child in the old age along
Mm-hmm.
with Sarah. That's miraculous. But
Mm-hmm.
um, she had the strength and the ability to stand strong and believe
Mm-hmm.
that what God says can happen.
Right.
Along with there was another one just came to my mind, but I just lost it that quickly. But anyway, yeah, Elizabeth, along with Mary, Elizabeth, and all those ladies.
Mm-hmm. I said Bathsheba, but it's and it kept in my head. It's Abigail, as a Bible scholar. It's Abigail who was Bathsheba was Uriah's wife. I didn't see anything historical about her, but it was Abigail who intervened and hurry up and prepared food and gave to David and his men and saved herself and her husband. Yeah. Yeah. Here, yeah, some more. What about the woman with the alabaster box?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, Mary and I could go on and on. Martha, the woman with the alabaster box, and she broke the box with expensive perfume and anointed Jesus's body as a preparation for what was to come. And she was not the best spoken of woman. I know some people say this was Martha's sister. This was saying it was Mary, who was questionable character, like a prostitute kind of a person. But that Mary, you know which Mary I'm talking, that broke the alabaster box. Her name went down in history, and God told her that, it was a memorial. So when we think about, history makers, when we think about International Women's Day, when we think about, Women History Month, we need to just reflect on and even further back on these women and the things that they did, that we can learn to do or not to do. And then, we can bring it up to date to where we are now, when I started out first by mentioning Rosa Parks.
We also have prophets too, female prophets in the Bible. We
Mm-hmm.
have Miriam, we have Deborah, and a couple of other. But we have those individuals that it may be considered back in the Bible for women not to be prophets, but they rose up and took their position, what God has for them in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
back then. So we're just thankful for them. And there's other women who worked with Paul at those times and able to minister to the people around that time. Aquila was Aquila
Um,
was
no,
it
I'll tell you in a minute.
Priscilla
It's
and another one. Is it Aquila? I don't know her name right now.
I'll tell you in a minute if while we talk, it will come to me. Priscilla, Aquila and Priscilla.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Priscilla was, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm saying. It's Aquila. I was wondering if it was Aquila. But yeah, we have those ladies that has done tremendous things in the Bible and stepped out and stepped into their destiny and paved the way for other ladies to say, hey, if they can do it, we can do it too. And then along that line, I want to recognize throughout our I'm sure we have plenty more in the Bible, but I want to recognize also those ladies who have been on our show, who have done tremendous. We had some great people on our show. We have those nurses starting out from back all the way back to the original cast, those nurses who are friends of yours that came on. They did so much for their community. I don't know if you remember the things that they talked about that they did, but those nurses that's on our front line, and they did great, along with yourself and your daughter, or your daughter, your sister Paula, who have been on our show, have done tremendous things. Who you guys got your PhD within the same year and graduated within the same weekend. So those are individuals that we can say that those are women has made impact and put a mark in history. And I'm sure people in your family and other individuals are looking up to you guys and saying, hey, look what they have done,
And we think of I'm trying to remember her name, but she was on the show. She was a 5-time breast cancer survivor. And she was amazing. The things that she was presently doing, that was really, really proud to see that, this did not quench her enthusiasm and her spirit, but she kept moving forward and was able to, and is now reaching out to help other breast cancer survivors. That was amazing.
Yeah, definitely. And then we had Dorothy Patrick Horn. She has worked in the educational field for many years and helped individuals to go through college throughout at Stony Brook University and Suffolk Community College in New York, and serve as a diplomat in a lot of areas, along with Dominique Thorne. We had her on. Most people don't know, or maybe our audience don't know, that she's also an actress, and she has been in various movies and about to take on a big role in Marvel World of being Riri in this is the female version of Iron Man. So she's getting that role. So that's a a young woman who is so young, who have move up the ranks, and they saying most of the time that it's hard to make it in Hollywood, but God has graced her with the ability to do great things, and we just want to be appreciative of the people who have been on our show,
right,
and the mark and the things that they've made, the contribution they've made throughout history. And
absolutely. Absolutely. Great shout out to her. And also, I think it was your niece who was the young entrepreneur.
Yes, my sister-in-law.
Yes. yeah, it was amazing, So if you want to know more about these people, go and look on our Facebook page and go look at previous shows, and you will get the whole full story about them. So just go back. We have archived It's on Facebook, some on YouTube, and check them out, and you will realize the caliber of these women that we interact with, day after day. And just as I know Bibilin may be getting ready to wrap up, and I'm talking about, like our present day women, because I want to give, when our guests come on, they will be having full reign to give their spin on, um, Women's History Month. But if we go down, starting with, in the history making woman, as with Rosa Parks, I'm going to tell you a little bit about, we know about her and not sitting in the back of the bus, refusing. Shirley Chisholm, and I'm reading this because I wrote it down. She was the first African American from a major political party to run for president, and she was the first Democratic woman of any race to do so. Shirley Chisholm was her name. And for those of you who don't know, it was not Hillary Clinton. It was Shirley Chisholm. Then we have Jane Roe. If we all talk about Roe versus Wade, Jane Roe was that landmark Roe versus Wade decision in 1973. We also read about Sandra Day O'Connor. This was in 1981. She was the first woman sworn in by President Reagan to serve on the US Supreme Court. And as I mentioned, Supreme Court, of course, we have Ruth Bader Ginsburg. 1993, she was also sworn in by President Clinton to be on the Supreme Court. And then, of course, we come to Hillary Clinton in 2016, which was she was a first, but the first woman to receive a presidential nomination from a major political party. So she was endorsed by the Democratic Party. Whereas, although Shirley Chisholm was the first one from a major political party to run for president, she didn't reach the point where she was endorsed as the party nominee. And then, of course, how can we forget Kamala Harris? I know you didn't. 2021, the first woman of color vice president of the United States. So that's our little history about Jamaican women.
But also I have to talk about Harriet Tubman, Moses, or Harriet. She has done a lot for women when it comes to, because of her, then we have the movement of the civil rights with Rosa Parks and all the sorts of stuff. And for her, I guess she would be the bridge from where we talked about the woman from the Bible and the woman of today, because she not only was she was the leader, one of the leaders, well, the first woman probably leader in the Underground Railroad. And not only that, she was a prophetess. Not only that, she was also in the military, because she was a spy also for the army, for the services. So
I didn't know she was a prophetess.
She basically, all the things that God showed her ahead of time, he showed her everything ahead of time before it happened. She gets a vision of it before it happened. And that's how she was, and that's how she was able to not be caught because of the visions that she received. And that's what got her through. So that's why I call her a prophetess, because she was able to see things before it happened. And she gave glory to God for all of that, because he gave her the ability to see things before they happen.
Great, wonderful. And we cannot forget my co-host as well, Bibilin, author, entrepreneur, and also she is a not a counselor, but she is a coach, a coach. So, you know, there she is, you know, history making. And I don't know about in her family or in immediate family, what does that stand out to them? But yes, we want to recognize her as well for the work that she has done.
Thank you.
Take a bow.
Going to take on yourself. But anyway, yeah. Um, this was good. This was good information for our, before we dive in with our guests coming on internationally and nationally, and recognizing, like you said, the ladies of the Bible, the ladies from a spiritual standpoint of the impact that they have made over generations. And also our guests, we
Mhm.
named a few, including Gloria Godson. We named a few that have
Mhm.
really paved the way for others and have
Yep.
served within their communities and doing things that
Yep.
great things throughout
Mhm.
the land. So
We also had Pastor Dana Rue.
yes,
Yep.
Pastor
Pastor
Nancy.
Faye Datsy. And we had Marian Tucker. No, they just keep coming back to me.
Yeah, awesome
Yeah. We
ladies
had
that's
some
doing great.
awesome women, awesome women.
Yeah,
Shout out to all of you awesome women who took the time out to be on our show. We really, really appreciate you.
yeah, definitely. And recognizing, yeah, we've been on such a long time, 40 seconds show or whatever we have right now. But we appreciate you guys listening to us each week and watching us each week. We appreciate you, all you ladies that watch us and is a part of our show and stay tuned each and every week. We appreciate you so much. I love you guys. And we if you don't have anything else, Vilma, I think
No,
that's
no,
it.
just keep watching, keep inviting your friends to watch us, keep giving us likes. That's how this is going to take off, you know? And but the thing is that we are in longevity and we do not give up easily and we are going to persist. So help us, like us, share,
And subscribe.
subscribe. Yes.
Okay, well, this is another episode of Life Chat with Viv and Bill. Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.